Hello, everyone. Will Gasper, Hospice of Michigan Grief Support Counselor in the Cadillac office. Welcome to our recap of the Men Overcoming Loss on December 15th of this year, 2020. And we started by having about 8 gentlemen join us, and we were very, very thankful that the gentlemen that showed up were very engaged and shared some of their struggles. And we started off by recapping what happened over Thanksgiving weekend and their celebrations. And the first gentleman said it was especially hard for him not having his wife with him the first Thanksgiving since she has passed. And it really hit him hard and unexpectedly as he was turning on the road to go to his brother's house, um, about 30 minutes away from his own house. And he realized at that point that his wife was no longer going to be with him. And obviously, he thought about that before, but it really hit him hard as he made that turn onto the road that his brother lives on. And it caught him right out of the blue, totally unprepared for the sorrow and the sadness that hit him at that moment. The next gentleman talked about the anticipation was actually worse than the day itself. All the thinking, all the worrying, all the anxiety was totally wasted energy for him. As it turned out, his celebration with his children and grandchildren in a safe environment was actually much, much better than he even imagined. So, and that often happens. Anticipation is actually worse than the actual day. So keep that in mind for this upcoming Christmas holiday weekend in about 2 weeks. And then the last guy that volunteered his experience, he talked about going out of state, going away from his own house where he shared all those memories of holidays with his wife and their children coming to their house. He was invited to go to one of the children's houses out of state, and it gave him new perspective on the fact that he is allowed to do make new rituals so that perhaps it's a little bit easier. And then we finished off by talking about self-care. Self-care in 5 different areas. And the first one is physical. To be physically aware, mentally, of your physical condition, proper eating habits, getting nutritious food, getting enough protein, and the balance of carbohydrates and all the other things that go into our physical, taking care of the furnace of our body, so to speak, giving that fuel that we need to keep going, and getting adequate rest in the evenings. Perhaps even during the day, taking a nap during the day when you need to recharge your batteries. Certainly getting fresh air and doing any type of physical activity, 15 to 30 minutes, 3 to 5 days a week, is an awesome thing to keep in mind to keep that engine going, so to speak, physically. Emotionally, give yourself permission to grieve, of course, to sob, to mourn, but also give yourself permission to perhaps find some joy in a movie or an activity that you may enjoy by yourself or perhaps with others, just to give that balance emotionally. Mentally, give yourself permission to try new things Try something maybe that's familiar, reading a novel or some other type of entertainment that will balance the state of sadness and the state of mourning, that will balance things out and give you that balance you need to keep going on day to day, day to day. Socially, as a good friend of mine says that her sister tells her that we've got to get up, suit up, and show up and take on the day. And so socially, we hope that you are able, as you can safely in this COVID time, to participate socially, even if it's physically distant, in some sort of activity with other people. So very important. Even if it's a cup of coffee, 6 foot apart, in an outdoor, of course, at this point in our winter season, it may be a little tough to have a cup of coffee outside. But as the COVID restrictions are lifted, that you can get back inside a restaurant for a cup of coffee or maybe a light sandwich at lunchtime with a trusted friend, perhaps a pastor, or perhaps even a therapist. And the last area that we wanted to talk about is taking care of your spiritual self. That is a part of ourselves that, usually acknowledges a higher power. And my prayer and hope for you is that you reconnect with that higher power. And it's okay if you want to argue with your higher power, because for most of us, that higher power is God, and God is big enough to handle that. And there's no fear of driving God or any other higher power away if we so are involved in this spiritual sense. And that can be a isolated kind of solitary existence in the spiritual world, as well as it can be shared. It can, in a safe environment with others in perhaps our church congregation or in some other spiritual activity, perhaps socially distanced on the outside. So we also talked about perhaps joining more groups online, perhaps socially distance or physically distance when it's allowed, by getting and receiving and perhaps giving feedback to others and support through others' grief, that you could possibly be the support person for perhaps one other person in the group. Because when we participate in others' grief journey, that we actually feel that we're not alone, and we are able to help them possibly in a way that someone else had not thought of. The way we see things, all of us see things differently. And healing happens in a group much more than folks realize. Wes, my co-facilitator, and I often say we as facilitators will get a subject started and then step back and let the group kind of work among themselves, supporting each other, listening to each other, being a safe refuge for each other. So, gentlemen, just to recap, we will be starting the second Tuesday of the month, which is starting January 5th at 6 p.m. And we hope you join us. And we'll be talking about, as well as on the third Tuesday of the month, we'll talk about specific subjects. It won't be a recap of the previous session. We'll be moving on, kind of a continuum, and maybe highlighting some of the things that were talked about in the previous session, but more than likely opening up the floor on that first Tuesday toward a little bit more feedback, a little bit less content, a little bit more interaction. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me tonight. And for Wes Lawton and our entire Hospice of Michigan organization, as well as the Arbor Hospice, our partners in the North Star community, I thank you and wish you a blessed holiday. Hang in there, and we'll see you in January. Take care.